Right, let's move it on. We've got our Climate Leader Insight, which is really exciting. The title of this, How Climate Tech Enables the Climate Transformation. And joining us on stage, Laura Zizzo, founder, co-founder, and chief executive officer of Manifest Climate. Big round of applause.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Now, a little bird, a little bunny, or as my kids would say, a little unicorn, told me that...
Oh, that's nice.
Told me that you've been doing this COP meeting thing since 2007.
Yeah.
So before we get into the whole Manifest Climate thing and what you're doing,
Is
which is amazing.
Botox working?
Yeah.
No.
So 2000, go back to yourself, Laura Zizzo, in 2007 to 2022, because a lot's happened.
Yeah.
Tell us.
Well, a lot has happened and a lot hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this conversation was the same one. Let's be honest. Right?
Without me being there.
Right. I mean, there's a lot has happened, but at that time, I had just graduated law school, and I was thinking about what my career would look like at a big law firm in Toronto, and thinking, geez, 2050, that's my professional career. Right? What am I going to do about this?
Yeah.
So I went home after the Bali conference, and I stayed on a couple more years at big law, but then I left and started my own law firm. I was saying, the clients aren't asking us the right questions. Right? The clients don't have the information. We've done a disservice because they are not informed. They are not thinking about this with the reality of the climate crisis.
It's not the client's fault.
It's sort of not the client's fault. It's all of us experts' fault
Yeah.
for not connecting the dots in a way that they can actually understand this is their decision to make. Empowering decision makers to make better decisions. So how am I going to do this without the right policy in place? So I started a management consulting firm based on interdisciplinary expertise, which has now morphed into a SaaS platform that's helping to connect the dots for our clients to make better climate-related investment decisions.
And tell us a bit more about Manifest Climate, what you do.
Manifest is a software as a service backed by our climate expertise. So because we had that, how many years, I don't do the math anymore, of consulting expertise that built the model is actually really smart. We used to do it manually, and now technology has caught up. So what we do is we look at all climate-related financial disclosures across thousands of documents, and we can align it with the TCFD. And we can say, what does it mean? You heard one of the previous panelists say, we saw alpha, it was Lana from LA Capital. We saw alpha when we saw better management. This is not we saw alpha when we knew exactly what the greenhouse gas emissions were. Yeah. This is when we knew the right person was paying attention to this. They'd performed better. So how do we make sure we understand who's paying attention to this? How are they actually integrating that into their core strategies and risk management practices? And then the numbers actually matter because we know what they're doing with them. So I think there's been an overemphasis on the type of technology that gets the numbers right, but not about putting it in context so decision makers can actually make better decisions to support the transformation.
So which within the value chain of actions are tools most widely available? And where within the value chain of actions do we actually need more tools?
Yeah, we've all heard of carbon calculators. There's a lot of software out there. It's important, vitally important we get the numbers right. But what we need is a writ large reorganization of how we think about this. And we kind of talked about it earlier. Even this conference's name, the Sustainable Investment Forum. What about the Unsustainable Investment Forum? Is that the rest of them? Where are they? Where are they meeting? So it's like, it should all be sustainable investing.
Yeah.
So there needs to be one of our investors called it the streamlining of a change management process that needs to happen. Competency building within organizations. Every analyst needs to know what climate change means. Every analyst needs to understand we are in a serious fight for the future of the planet, and you better be thinking about it. And how do you increase competency among your whole organization, not just people who attend a conference like this?
So we should rename it, what, just the investment
Yeah,
forum,
or all the rest of them, unsustainable?
Yeah. Technology, obviously you're at the cutting edge of it. You're in an exciting place when it comes to technology and helping clients with their disclosures, benchmarking, and giving them advice on where the opportunities are as well. Talk to us about the opportunities side.
That's right. Leaving law was really freeing because you got to say it's not just about risk management. This is about what is your organization going to look like in the future. It's moving it outside of sustainability into viability. And if you think about it like that, viability, there's a lot of opportunity to think about what's this future going to look like. So I think transition plans, and I like to call them transformation plans, because it's not just about reduction of carbon.
Are we banning transition and sustainable?
Yeah. Because I'm a disruptor.
Yeah, we like disruptors.
Yeah, so in your transformation, it's both about how you deeply decarbonize as quickly as possible, but also how you deal with the increased physical risks at the same time. That's what we love about the TCFD, right? It's not just about transition, it's about resiliency. There was a question on the previous panel. The best investment decisions are going to be those that tackle both of them, and there's so much opportunity in that space.
Yeah. Disrupting. What's the best way of disrupting within the climate space? How would a disruptor advise wannabe disruptors to succeed?
It's a simple answer. Ask good questions.
Yeah.
And if we can empower decision makers to ask good questions based on expertise, not things they think should matter, like I think there's an overemphasis on carbon emission accounting. I think it's important, but we know we need to get to zero as quickly as possible. If we got the number exactly right, does that matter as much as what is your plan to get lower now? So I think we need to just ask better questions and think about the materiality, like what matters in your core business.
Yeah.
For far too long, we see people thinking about operational emissions in the financial services space. It doesn't matter.
What other questions should we be asking, the ones that maybe we're not asking?
Who's in charge? Who's in charge? The governance framework of the TCFD, it's not a mistake that the circle is the biggest in governance. Everything fits within governance. What's your plan? Who's in charge? How are you tracking progress? How are they being kept accountable? Those are the questions we all need to be asking at every decision table.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much action within the tech space, within the climate space, isn't there? Besides your own enterprise, what's exciting?
Oh, it's so funny because we just raised our Series A, and there's a lot of discussion around who your competitors are when you're talking to investors.
Of course.
And we're like, who are they? Have you found them? Because there needs to be more of us. So although they say that there's a proliferation...
That was my sort of point.
Yeah.
There seems to be a sense there's just too much and there needs to be a whole round of consolidation, no?
I mean, we're seeing that.
Yeah.
Certainly seeing that. And part of me is a little bit disappointed when I see that, because we need disruptive ideas. We need them to have a chance to really disrupt. And if we see the consolidation into, the existing infrastructure, I worry that it loses emphasis. I hope that what that happens is it becomes an internal disruptor.
Yeah.
So I think we need a lot more tools, a lot more of us focused on this. And I think you don't have to be a climate tech firm to be a climate tech firm, right? Like each firm has to think about their role in the transformation. And that's what TCFD is asking us to think about and better disclose.
Yeah. What's unique about your tech?
Yeah, so we have used, our brains, the lawyers that were part of the management consulting firm, to think, how do we read disclosures? How do we curate information for our clients? What's consistent about that? And we taught an ML model, machine learning, using, best-in-class machine learning and AI.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I think this will work. Let's test it. In our pilot, we were all blown away that the machine actually found the aligned disclosures better than the lawyers. So when you teach it, based on that type of expertise, and you use the best available technology, we can scale. So it took us months to do the type of work we used to do when you'd have a consulting engagement. We can do that in a few hours now, and then just have that human brain doing the harder work that the computers haven't been taught yet.
When did you first become familiar with machine learning and AI? When did it first introduce itself to you? When you were a lawyer or after? When you were practicing?
I mean, you're
set
a
up
human in the world, so we know that this exists. I knew that I didn't know enough to build it myself.
Yes.
So when I was thinking about how do we transition from a lawyer to a consultant to a tech CEO? Well, you find tech gurus to work with. So my co-founder, that's why thank you for acknowledging the co-founder, comes from a SaaS background and brought his expertise to the table. So our team is about 50-50 technologists, data scientists, and climate experts, and we come together to kind of use the best of those past experiences to build technology.
And how difficult is it to find talent?
You know, our recruiters always say it's going to be harder than it turns out to be for us, because I think a lot of people are trying to move into this space. So we have people that, you know, I can't believe they work here, and they want to be part of the solution.
Is it easy to lure brilliant talent from other industries?
We're seeing success, so I'm very humbled by the people that are coming to work with us on this big challenge. I think, you know, you're seeing it, we all see it on LinkedIn. If you're in this conference, you see the amount of job postings for sustainable finance, for climate expertise. It just shows the need for our product, in my view, because there's just not enough people to respond to the scale that's required.
You said sustainable finance, but binning sustainable,
well, yeah,
finance.
Just finance, thank you.
Keep thinking of questions, by the way. We'll have a few questions in a minute. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to change my page so if I can see if there's any questions coming in from the audience. Yes. There. Oh, is that me? I think it is, yeah. We'll come back to that in just a few seconds' time. Let's talk about ESG, because your platform is climate specific, but of course the marketplace tends to react to ESG. So what's the relationship there?
Yes. If you want to call it ESG, we'll call it, I used to have a joke like Pretty Women, what do you want our name to be? But it's like the ESG and climate climate is not a subset of the E, right? Climate is a lens to see ESG through. And I think, you know, thinking that ESG reporting is the same as TCFD reporting is very dangerous. TCFD reporting is in relation to the fact that we have a crisis. It's called the climate crisis, and we need to rapidly decarbonize. And it's asking for people to talk about the failure of their investment horizon to think about climate change. It's not saying that all the other ESG factors are not important. They're just not this one. And this one, if we don't get right, none of the other ones will matter, because climate is a social issue, climate is a governance issue, climate is a human rights issue, climate is an environmental issue, biodiversity issue. So I think we need to put the climate lens on as an urgent initiative in order to get the rest of ESG right.
On your website it says climate's beyond ESG, important distinctions and connections between the two.
Yeah. We say that you can't have a solid ESG strategy without a solid climate strategy, so it's a really good place to start.
Yeah. What are the main challenges of leveraging climate expertise on your platform?
The challenges.
Yeah, the main sort of challenges and advantages as well.
You know, I think that a lot of people come a little scared to this issue.
Yeah.
And not the people in this room, but our clients, public issuers, are saying, oh, we have to deal with climate change. There's a regulatory need to do that. You know, I'm from Toronto, but the SEC in the US has just put out this regulatory proposal that's requiring these transition plans. I think that there's a fear, there's a sense of fear. How do we deal with this? What does this mean? And I think what we are trying to do is reassure everyone, like, we're gonna be okay as long as you pay attention to what matters. So I think people really want to get into the details, but they have to start with those governance issues, the bigger strategy issues, risk management issues, and then we'll share information. What I realized was there's a lot of information out there, but people are not pulling it to connect the dots so that we can make better decisions. So what we're trying to do is say, help level up your organization, take advantage of best practices that are already in the public domain. We have tons of public disclosure. Someone was saying, poor analysts that have to read it all, right? So what we're trying to do is say, how do you curate that information aligned with the standards that we've all agreed? 85% of global GDP has endorsed the TCFD. We've all agreed we want you to disclose in this way. How can you get better information to do that so that you can empower better decisions?
Let's get some questions. Come on, audience. Let's see if we can ask a tricky question. I've got some virtual questions. Any physical audience questions? While you're getting some courage, let's ask a couple of these. What tools are available for investors seeking to develop net zero strategies, and are they sufficient for the task?
For investors. So this goes to a really key issue around what information are they basing that on? Because we've been focused on financial services so much, so they need to engage their portfolio companies to get that better information. And again, it's not just about emissions, it's about strategy. So I think investors and portfolio managers have an obligation to level up their own understanding and their own engagement with those companies to get better information, to make better decisions. So the net zero strategies are a label on understanding, is this portfolio going to be around in a future that is sustainable? And I think we have to move out of just thinking about emissions as the only thing that we think about in a net zero strategy. Of course, we know what we need to do. We need to decarbonize the economy, we need to electrify with clean, renewable energy, we need to no longer exploit any more fossil fuels. But we have to ask about more strategic implications, and I think the tools are certainly developing. That's why I like the proliferation of these tools. I think there needs to be a testing of them so that the right ones will rise to the top and help make those decisions.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Gentlemen, if you'd like to hand the microphone over, tell us who you are, where you're from, and fire a question at Laura.
Thanks very much. William Atwell from Sustainable Fitch. I wanted to ask what your thoughts were around what is the big governance shortcoming, really? Is it about what boards do or don't do? Is it about how senior executives are incentivized?
Yep.
You talked about kind of what matters and who matters. So what is really missing?
I think there is definitely a competency gap at the board level that is attempting to be addressed, and there's great initiatives like Chapter Zero and others that are thinking about this, but it goes to the question that you asked about how do you be a disruptor? Well, isn't that what a board member should do if there's a large strategic risk? Shouldn't you ask hard questions? And you don't have to be a climate expert. So I think there's a lot of these resolutions that are talking about board competency, scapegoat. Like, you don't need one expert. You need everyone to be competent in a very important strategic issue. So we need to raise the competency level of all boards of directors of large and small companies so that they're able to ask the right questions of management. And then we need management to have actual accountability related to transition plans. So we have some great examples that we pull out on the platform of compensation linked to climate targets from industries that you might be surprised. Like Shell has a great policy. They figured out how to actually link some climate targets to executive compensation. You don't have to be in the oil and gas sector to learn from that. So that's how we're pulling out best practices on the platform to try to encourage more competency. It's really sad to me that governance is one of the least disclosed areas of the TCFD. We've seen that time and time again. It's not hard. You can disclose that you don't have good governance policy, right? So the lack of disclosure now becomes basically an omission that you don't. And I think the latest TCFD status report was that still only about 50% of public companies reviewed are disclosing governance. It's just not acceptable.
Any other questions from our physical audience? Yes, over there, yes.
Hello, I'm T. Gambold, and I'm the CEO of a company called ESG DAO. We're actually an open source project opening up data for all investors. So my question to you is, what do you think about open source, making sure that this is open to everyone so that we can categorize, we can better educate, and we can govern in an open way? Because the silos in data is really what's causing all this confusion.
I think it's a great question, and I love it. I think that the open source data initiative we're involved with, open source climate, for instance, we need access to that information, and it needs to be available. Absolutely in favor of that. And then we need to understand, we need to encourage businesses to see a win here if they can innovate around that data. So I think it has to be both and. Open source data is a huge part of the solution when we understand how we can align that information with decision making. So I love that question. I think that it's a challenging one when you're trying to support a tech company that's trying to have a subscription. Like, we do sell a subscription to our platform, but I think that there's a way to do both, to have open source data and then build platforms on top of it, and I'm really interested to chat with you more about that.
Yes, please do approach Laura in the networking breaks. Any other physical questions? You mentioned your Series A. What happens next?
we get more people on the platform. If you guys, so it's really an interesting time. I think you're all investors. We talk about expectation-based valuation. There's 41,000 publicly traded companies in the world that most have not thought about TCFD yet. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands more private companies in the world that need to understand this if we're going to actually move through the climate transformation. So we have a purpose to really bring more transparency to capital markets, building off of the TCFD framework that's so global. So it's about scaling as fast as we can to try to help with the climate transformation.
Laura, we've nailed it. Look, 12,
Wow.
11, 10, the first speaker to do so. Give her a massive round of applause. Thank you very much
Thank
indeed,
you.
Laura.
Thank
Brilliant. Laura Zizzo, their CEO of Manifest Climate. And if you've got any further questions for Laura for Manifest, do visit the virtual expo if you're online. And of course, the physical outside. She'll be there, as will her team as well. Brilliant. That was very, very exciting and interesting, and I learned a lot.